Welcome to Mission Imperfect, the podcast about finding your own path, your own way, and embracing the imperfection of the journey.
We're your hosts, life coaches, former HR professionals, and mums, Kirsty and Catherine.
We love to discuss the topics that come up time and time again for our coaching clients and which affect us all, from things like acceptance and boundaries to values and well-being and everything in between.
Each episode ends with a question for you and us to reflect on. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to grab a cuppa and a biscuit and join us in getting lost in finding ourselves. Hello and welcome to Mission Imperfect. This week we are again talking about coaching because we realized that we couldn't possibly say everything there was to say in one episode, even though we do tend to go on a bit longer than we mean to. So we are back with a new aspect on coaching. What happens inside a coaching session?
Yes. We thought, we've done an episode where we busted some myths about life coaching, trying to explain a bit about what it is and what it isn't. We've also done an episode and talk about what it offers and when it may be useful. But we thought, let's actually try and dive inside a session because we realize a lot of people listening probably haven't actually experienced being in a coaching session. And it just might be helpful to have a bit of an understanding what you might expect. So just a caveat, I suppose the obvious answer to that question of what happens inside a coaching session is it will vary to a degree. So I know that sounds like a cheats answer, very much like a coach's or a politician's answer, but there are different variables at play. We can't ignore that, can we? So because obviously there is the coach, one person in that conversation and their style. There's also you, the client, with your personality, your communication style, the way you think, the way you express yourself. And then, of course, there's the third element of what's actually going to be discussed during the session, which is going to vary as well. So no two sessions are going to be the same.
No, they're not ever, are they? So I think we can end it there with saying, well, actually, it just all depends. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Well, that's our record length session of like 2 minutes. So, but no, we're not going to leave it there
We're not going to
quite.
do that.
No, we're going to try and give you an idea of what's inside a session, and that's probably with some confidence of what it'd be like if one of us two were the life coach on one side of the conversation, because we have joked that we are the same person. But in all seriousness, we do share quite a similar ethos and style and approach about life coaching. So it could vary, but we're going to try and give an indication what it might be like with a coach like us.
There's a bit of an idea. And I think also it's worth saying that what we're saying today might not apply in the same way if you sign up for a coaching program that's got a sort of a specific framework and specific deliverable outcome, or if you sign up for group coaching, because the format that the coach is going to be using for that will be quite different depending on what they're trying to achieve for you. But in a sort of a one-to-one, I guess, free-form coaching session, best way of describing it, that's what we're talking about.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So it could be a standalone session or it could be part of a series. But yes, we're assuming it's a one-to-one session and you're turned up. So how's it likely to start? Start at the beginning. Yeah. So your coach is likely to want to try and help you be at ease. And that's not some kind of sneaky trick that coach is deploying on you there, because genuinely it is in both of your interests. Because if you feel sort of safe and comfortable, you're more likely to be able to be open and honest. And that is quite crucial, as I think we've mentioned before about coaching. You kind of, if you're skirting around the issue, there'll become a point when perhaps you're both aware that you're skirting around the issue, and then time is ticking by and you're not perhaps really addressing what's going on. It's like the elephant in the room and you're both ignoring it. So if you're at ease and you can say what needs to be said, your coach is there to help you kind of unpick it and unravel it. I think that's quite an important thing to mention.
Absolutely crucial, yeah. And that's why most coaches will offer some kind of conversation ahead of you booking in with them. It goes by different names, doesn't it? It's discovery call, chemistry call, things like that.
Just who am I going to be talking to?
Yeah. It's a chance for you both to sound each other out and make sure that there is a rapport there, a connection, and that there's the potential to create that ease and comfort in the session.
Yes, absolutely. And if you haven't covered some of the practicalities in that sort of pre-session call, you might just cover that off very quickly at the
Mm.
start of the session. Just things like, obviously the coach has a duty of confidentiality. They might be taking notes, but they probably explain why and what for, and if they'll be shared or if there's any recording, anything like that. You might
Yeah.
sort of just cover that off at the start because, like I said, it's being able to say what needs to be said without worrying about what's going on. It would be great, obviously, if neither of you have distractions. I know you can't always guarantee that,
Hmm.
doorbells and things like that happening, but ideally, you've got that time kind of earmarked as well for the session because it's surprising when you get deep into your thinking, you can open up an awful lot more. I think people are surprised how much you can cover in, say, an hour. An hour is a typical coaching session length, but it could
Hmm.
also be an hour and a quarter or even an hour and a half. I don't know anyone who does just a 2 hour session. Do you, Kirsty? I think an hour or up to an
I
hour and a
don't.
half is normal.
I time mine at, or aim to be about an hour and a half because I tend to find that sort of just rapport building and the little bit of easing into things at the start can eat into the hour, and I prefer not to feel rushed. But
Yeah.
it's kind of up to 90 minutes, so that if we reach a point where we've clearly reached, a good point to finish for that session, and it's a bit earlier, then that's okay. And likewise, if the 90 minutes is up at a point where there is still stuff happening and we are both in a position to continue with it, then I will do that.
Yeah. And you might have an idea when you turn up to a coaching session of what you're going to discuss. Like you might have even been asked some sort of pre-questions when you booked in, like, oh, what is it we're going to discuss
Hmm.
today? But even if that's the case, and don't worry if it's not, your coach is still likely to check in with you and say, what is it you want to use our time together today for, and what do you want to get out of it? Because it could have changed since you answered those questions. Something could have come up that very morning, and what's on your mind is likely to come out anyway. And you don't have to worry about it sounding clumsy or unclear or, not a complete sort of sentence or anything. Your coach will help you work this out, even if you're not totally sure what it is yet. You've got
Yeah,
the session booked.
absolutely. Even if you don't really know at all what it is you want. I mean, if you've gone to a coach because you've got that sense of things are not right, I'm a bit stuck. I'm not sure what I want out of life anymore. Though those are valid reasons to go for a coach, as we talked about before. And when you present that to a coach, that's the starting point for exploring what's going on. And it's your coach's job to help draw that out for you and clarify that thinking. So you
Yeah,
don't have to go in there
exactly.
saying, I feel this and I want this, and that's what I need you to deliver from this coaching. I mean, if you can do that, great, set up the challenge, let's do it. But if you can't, then we'll find out what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, you're likely to spend, so after that initial sort of introduction and settling in, you're likely to spend a little bit of time really sort of teasing out what is it we need to know more about, perhaps to be able to answer this question, what needs exploring, what
Mm.
might be in the way currently, like what's the current reality, the current situation compared to the desired one, and what decisions or actions you're likely to want to have in place by the end. Because as lovely as coaching is for downloading and digesting and reflecting and all these wonderful things that do happen in the space of a session, it's not just a sort of nice chat. It's like a chat with purpose, isn't it?
Yeah,
There is a sort
absolutely, yeah.
of idea of where we want to get to, and it's allowed to change. It's worth saying that. During the session, you might find you go off on a tangent. That's what you might think is
A
a
tangent,
tangent.
really?
I know. You might talk about biscuits, for example, because
Who would do
it
that, Catherine? Who would do
exactly who.
that?
But the point to note about when you go off on a tangent, and this has happened quite a few times with clients for me, and I'm sure it has for you too, Kirsty, is that it's not right or wrong. It just is happening. And you
Hmm.
both just might need to take a moment to acknowledge it and see if, is this the right avenue to explore for now? And if so, where are we going to go with it? Or do we want to get back onto what we thought the original subject was? We might just need to make a choice. at least in terms of if we may not get around to both, it might be an either or a which first, or how does this fit?
Yeah,
It's not like you have to sort of carve things in stone, but you said you were going to talk about this, and now we're talking
yes,
about this because it's come up for a reason. And that's the beauty of
definitely.
coaching, because it's all about accessing new thinking. And when a thought pops up, it probably has popped up for a reason. So even though it's unexpected, it could be relevant. And that's
Very
just
much
worth
so.
questioning. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the tangents are always important because, broadly speaking, probably one of two things. They are either an avoidance technique, so
Mm,
that's telling you
yes.
something. If there's a pattern
Yes.
of going off on a tangent when you get close to a specific issue, then that tells you something, right? Um, but it can also be the subconscious launching into things for you. So bringing up the things that are lurking there that you've not been consciously ready to touch on or to put into the mix yet. So it may seem random. You might not know where it's come from, but it will usually mean something.
Yeah, absolutely. You're quite right. It could be one of two things, something we do want to delve into, or it's like it literally is a diversion tactic. Look at me over here, so I don't have to
Yes.
talk about the thing that's really
You don't want
uncomfortable.
to talk about the difficult thing. No, no, no. Come over here.
So I think one of the main things to expect in the main body, if you like, of the session is you are going to be asked questions. The coach is
Absolutely.
not going to be doing all the thinking and telling for you. That's not really how it works.
No.
I'm sure we did that on our busting myths episode, but
Mm,
there really is a purpose to all of that, because it's to draw out that thinking and answers and realizations from you, not from anyone else, because that's when it really matters. And they might
yes.
share some insights and reflections back about the things that you've said, because hearing exactly what it is you've said can be really enlightening. I can even
Absolutely.
think back to my very early days, and I'm sure I had a client use the word terrifying sort of about 3 times in the first sentence. And I pointed it out to her, and she didn't even notice. She was like, wow,
Hmm.
didn't know I felt that strongly about it.
It's amazing how people can do that. I mean, I think I've talked before about instances where clients have told me two different things kind of as fact, which conflict with each other, and they don't realize until you highlight it that they can't actually both be true. And it's only when you tell them their own words back to them that oh, hang on a
Yeah,
minute. This story
absolutely.
I've been telling myself is it cannot be true. And
Mm.
that's eye-opening.
And that's because we don't often get to question our thinking. Effectively, what a coach is doing is sort of absorbing this verbal stream of consciousness that's coming out, and they can just pick up on things that you just don't
Mm,
notice. I mean, and that's true of all of
absolutely.
us, isn't it? When it's our own
Yes.
thinking and our own recognition of what's happening, we're just streaming thoughts, not perhaps really questioning or understanding them. And that's what really happens, I guess, in the session. So your coach will be listening closely, because it's not just what we say. There's things that we repeat, there's how we say it, those exact choice of words. There's also what we don't say. All
Hmm.
of this gives us clues for where the answers are we can't necessarily find on our own.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the very simple things, isn't it, Kirsty? Have you ever found you've sometimes asked, and it seems like a dangerously simple question, and they're like, oh, I have not thought to ask that before.
Yes, I think as a coach, that not shying away from asking what seems to be an obvious or overly simplistic question is really important because they're the ones that generally don't get asked because people think they're too obvious or simplistic. And
Yes.
it's amazing what
Yeah.
can come from them.
Yeah. In fact, just last week, I had a session with a client, and I just asked her a very, very short and simple question, which was, do you want to?
Hmm?
And she was like, oh, she said, I'm going to write that down so I can come back to it. Again, really, really simple question.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to play around with things, because a lot of things we do have a choice whether we do them or not.
Not
or when
necessarily
we
a
do it
choice we
something.
like, but a choice.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, exactly, exactly. So sometimes we can ask ourselves, do we really want, if it's, we're talking about maybe an ambition or a change we might be looking for, but we're scared of it and all those things. It's like, well, is this something I really want? And you could put the emphasis on many different parts of that sentence. If do I really want it? Do I really want it? Or do I want it? You
Yeah.
can play around with that a few different ways to see where you
Yeah.
land.
Do I want it? Yeah.
So I don't want something else. Yeah, exactly. And your coach won't be telling you, I hope. Anyway, certainly you wouldn't be hearing this from us too, but like, oh, you should try this because it's not
Mm.
really for us to dictate something. But having said that, a coach can maybe offer, with permission, maybe a suggestion, an idea, an observation, but very much in an unattached way. There's not with any expectation of this must be a course of action you pursue. They might just offer up some kind of idea that might be of interest that the client
Yeah.
can easily just say, I'll think about it, or it's not for me, or yes, I might give that a go. It's very much without attachment, and it's probably not that often. What would you say, Kirsty? Do you find that pops up for you
Mm.
sometimes?
Sometimes I'd think of it as offering an invitation to consider something,
Mm.
and but it's very much based on what the client has said to you, what's come up in that session, and the way it's been talked about. It's it's more often around doing things to help make the mindset changes you've said you want to make, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yes,
So it'd be more
absolutely.
suggesting a technique that might help you get, deal with your headspace in a better way, rather than suggesting a course of action to solve your problem.
Yes,
Would
absolutely.
you
Yes.
agree? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it could definitely be something to it's very difficult when we're used to thinking in a certain way to get accustomed to an idea of thinking a little bit differently.
Hmm.
So, what I often try to find with clients is if something feels like a big leap, what might be a small step? Could that be a helpful way to mitigate risk? For example, if we don't have an appetite for risk and we know that, and we don't want to try and just sort of force a big, brave move, if that's what it feels like, so, okay, then maybe we don't need to. What could be an option instead that's
Yeah.
smaller and less riskier? So it could be like a suggestion in that kind of sense. But the idea
Yes,
would
that's
still
a good
be,
point.
yeah, what might I do with that? And the beauty of all this is the idea is to try and open up this, like as we've said many times, this sort of new thinking, progressed thinking. Because what we don't want is to keep thinking around in a circle and not going anywhere. That's the whole reason we've come for coaching, isn't it? Because we're feeling
Yes,
stuck or lost or adrift. And what often happens is you'll continue to join the dots after the session. It's almost like the
very much
download
so.
time.
Hmm.
When you stop a Zoom and it sort of processes for a little while, if you've done a recording before it shuts down, it's almost like our brain needs that kind of digesting time. And even sometimes it'll be later on again that you'll perhaps be walking or doing something, and some kind of the dots will join up a little bit and you'll make a connection that perhaps wasn't there before. And I think, yeah, certainly when you have like a stream of sessions, the beauty is there's bits of magic happen in between the sessions as well as in them.
Yes, it can be an ongoing process. What starts to shift during the session, possibly without you realizing, can carry on shifting for quite some time. So I think it's not uncommon for people who have, a number of coaching sessions to say, I'm not sure I got much out of that.
Mm.
And yet to make huge progress on what they wanted to work on. But because they didn't come out of a session going, oh my God, I had this radical insight which changed everything and now I know how to sort everything out, they feel that the coaching has not delivered something concrete for them.
Yeah.
But that shift in mindset and attitude and behavior over time is what really matters. And
Yeah.
lots of people may not credit the coaching they had for that. And that doesn't matter as long as it happens.
Yes. Exactly. Because unfortunately, we don't get to flip switches as much as we would like to. Sometimes, like, oh, I'll just turn that connection off in my brain and open up a new one. They take a bit of
Done.
time
Yeah.
and practice. Yeah. Sorry about that. They do take a bit of time to get bedded in,
Yeah.
but that is what leads to lasting change. Because effectively, a lot of what we're trying to talk about is lasting change. It's not
Mm.
about it being a sort of flash in the pan, or I was brave one day and then bottled out the next. You're kind of looking for consistency in actions, and your all the things that are tied together, your thinking, your perceptions, your behavior, to kind of move together, but they can't,
Yeah.
on the whole, generally take one massive leap all together all at the same time, unfortunately.
It would be nice if you could, but mostly it doesn't seem to work that way, does it? If it
No.
did, we'd all be doing it.
Yes. Yes. So
I would anyway. Yeah.
yeah, no, imagine. I'm sure we'd be very rich as well, Kirsty, if we managed to sort of make that magic formula, because like I said, I don't think anyone else has come up with it.
Indeed. No. So how we've talked about what's been going on through the coaching session and the all the questions and the exploring. I like the word exploring in this context because it really is a chance to find out what's going on for you. And it's a conversation that's entirely about you. And that is so rare and it
Yes.
can be so refreshing and enlightening for people. And it's brilliant. But how do sessions end? Especially if there
So
is none of those big light bulb moments going on.
yeah, I appreciate that. I still think, you don't just sort of stop talking, sort of like and cuts kind of thing.
We're
There is
done.
a hopeful kind of, yeah, sort of wrapping up, if you like, in the sense of how are you feeling about what's been discussed? Is anything feeling clearer? What might still need a little bit of work on? What might you think about afterwards? What might you do next? So you might even be invited to sort of see if there's an action that you might take after
Mm,
the session. And you can also ask your coach if they might check in on with you. I've offered this quite a lot. Sometimes, for example, if a client's been like, right, I'm going to have a go at rewriting my CV, for example, and it's we know that's a horrible job. We all
yeah.
put it off.
Horrible, isn't it?
And I've sometimes offered, would you like to check in on X date to see if it's been done at that point? Because I think for a lot of people, it's quite nice, this idea of a bit of accountability, because we can let ourselves off the hook if we're being completely honest. Friday comes around and you'd rather have a biscuit and watch TV than do the CV if you haven't done it. Totally understandable. But
Have a
if you
biscuit
said,
and do the CV.
sorry,
Have a biscuit and do the CV.
well, yes, well, that's multitasking. I'm not sure. Anyway, an episode on multitasking, what can count and what can't. Um, yeah, it's by no means obligatory, and you're not doing it for the coach. It's just a way of keeping yourself kind of accountable. But it works
Yes.
for some people for sure. And you might discuss booking in a future session even. So rather than checking in between, you might say, I will have it done by the next session or whatever it might be, because it might be appropriate. And that very much varies whether you'll be thinking
Hmm.
about a future session, or perhaps you are midway through a package or whatever it might be. But for a lot of people, it's handy just for it to not sort of finish with like a hard stop, if you like, even if it's a single session. But it depends what your coach offers. And again, hopefully that will have been explained and
Yeah.
contracted at the very start.
Yeah. And at the end of a session, I think there can be lots of different emotions, can't there? You can, I think you can come away feeling a little bit out of it, a little
Mm,
bit perhaps a little bit wobbly if a lot's come up and you're trying to process it. I mean, I know for myself when I'm being coached, at the end of a session, I become quite withdrawn. It feels that I've gone inward to do the processing of all that's come up.
mm.
And I actually find it really difficult to put a coherent sentence together. Actually, listeners might not be that surprised by that, but I find it particularly difficult to put a
Oh,
coherent
you left
sentence
the door
together.
open for that one, Kirsty.
I did, didn't I? Um, so yeah, when when I was first being coached and that happened to me, I found it really quite worrying and odd. But now I recognize it as a good sign that the processing is happening and that kind of going inward
Mm.
state is a good sign. Um, but of course, you might come out feeling on top of the world because you've made some progress, you've had some insights, and things feel better.
Yeah. I think, to be honest, I think a whole host of emotions can be experienced during a
Yeah.
session, because it's not always going to be comfortable. Let's be honest. So even though your coach has tried to put you at ease for an element of comfort, I'm afraid it's not to say that you will always feel comfortable, because there is something about maybe recognizing some uncomfortable truths during the
Mm-hmm.
session. Think confidence wobbles, doubts over decisions we've made or are contemplating making, frustration over our circumstances. It's all really common and it's
Yep.
all really normal. So you're not alone if that's what you experience. But hopefully, you'll also feel some kind of sense of movement as opposed to being stuck, maybe some relief from unburdening. I think that's really common because we don't
Yes.
often get this space just to have time for ourselves, and maybe some enthusiasm for what you may do next. I think there's always a relief and a sense of, yeah, enthusiasm when you think, oh, hooray, I've kind of worked something out. I may not be there yet, but I know where I'm going to take my next step. It's not uncommon for clients to say things like, oh, I didn't realize I'd felt that way or that strongly about something, and now I
Mm.
understand what that means. Or, I feel lighter now just having
It's
spoken
a
it
big one.
through. Yeah, it really is a big one, because just having that time to really sort of download but also process. And I think that probably explains what, when you were saying, Kirsty, afterwards you find you have to have that sort of almost decompressed ice, because your brain's been working hard.
Yeah.
That's the truth of it. And in a way, that's true for both coach and coachee, because you're both doing a lot of listening and processing and sort of understanding and unpicking. I personally don't do back-to-back sessions as a coach. I need
No.
time in between, partly because I need to sort of
Yes.
tune out from one client before I tune in to another client, but I don't put them too close together because I also need
Mm.
to kind of decompress a little bit in between. So
Also,
it's,
cup of tea and biscuit.
yes, yes, of course, yeah, sustenance
Yes.
for the brain as well. And it's not about miracle working, but it is about creating some momentum when we might have just been feeling a bit stuck, lost, or at a dead end before. Because the little bit of magic, really, in my opinion, is coaching being that space to pause, to think, to process, and to be heard. That's where I think the
Yes.
magic is. Would you agree? Do you think there's some more
Oh,
magic that?
I agree completely. Yes. And that being heard, not just by somebody else, but by yourself, hearing yourself fully, that really matters. And I think that contributes so much to that sense of lightness that a lot of clients experience at the end of a session.
Yeah. So hopefully that has given you all a bit of an insight into the insides of a coaching session. If you've experienced a very different kind of session, do let us know. Do
Oh,
put a
yes.
comment on. We'd love to hear, because obviously we're talking about our experience as life coaches and the way that we've trained and learned our craft. It'd be very interesting to know if you've had a very different experience as well as perhaps a very similar one. So yeah, do let us know. But we'll end as we always do, quotes and a question. And we're going to do
Absolutely.
something a little bit different, because we're
Yes.
talking about the inside of a coaching session. We really wanted the quotes to reflect what it's like to have experienced it. So we've actually both got quotes from clients who've experienced coaching with us, and I absolutely love yours, Kirsty. Although you've got, I'll let you share because I think you've got a couple, but there's one, the one that I love. So
Um, okay, well, I'll go with Kirsty creates a very safe and nurturing coaching environment. She listens intently and has a knack of asking gentle but powerful questions that help you to cut through your internal noise and explain and explore what's underneath the confusion and uncertainty. And I love that testimony because that's exactly what I try to do.
yes. And whilst that is lovely, I'm afraid I love this,
It's
which a client said, apparently. I love this. I'm not a bad sheep. I'm a great goat. Love that. Although you have said it needs a bit of explanation, but even so, I imagine, did at some point some farmyard reference come up or something?
well, the client just repeatedly told me that they felt like a sheep, but not even a very good sheep, more of a black
Ah,
sheep. But
right.
then
Okay.
they were talking about the past and they talked about all sorts of stuff. And I did the reflection thing. I said, hang on a minute, you've told me this, 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 and that doesn't sound like sheep-like behavior to me. What do you think? At
Mm.
which point they went, oh my God, I'm not a bad sheep. I'm a great goat.
I love that. Who doesn't want to be a great goat? There you go. I'm sure they came away from that session buzzing with their great goatiness. So I
A
love
buzzing
that.
goat. But yes, it did quite, the hashtag be more goat started to be used at that point.
Oh, nice, nice. Okay, of course, goat meaning it means greatest of all time, doesn't it? With
It just meant goat.
yeah,
For us, that it just meant goat.
yes, yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah,
I like that. But
yeah.
it's own acronym, doesn't it? Goat, right? And
And
here's
yours.
a client testimonial of mine. She said, Catherine has such a calming presence, and I always feel heard and understood. She's excellent at summarizing what I've said, focusing on the relevant parts to discuss, and gently challenging me when I need it. She's a wonderful coach who truly wants the best for her clients. She has a special ability to see things in people that they may not see in themselves. I would recommend her to anyone. And it's so
Thing.
lovely to hear these things, isn't it? Because obviously
Yes.
we do it because we love to coach. It's not for like the plaudits and stuff, but just it's nice to kind of have some kind of sense that people are getting something out of it, because we are both such big fans of coaching
Mm.
and we regularly experience it ourselves. But it's so
We want
nice to
people
know
to
that our
benefit.
clients
Yeah.
have to. Yeah, exactly, exactly. So we have a question for you. What would you like to discuss with a coach right now if you were given the chance, even if you knew it might feel a bit squirmy at first?
Squirmy is a great word.
It is, isn't it?
Okay. So, and I think this will feel a bit squirmy, but I would want to discuss how can I change the feeling of stuckness that I've been in for way too long. And as a coach and someone who's done all this kind of work, that feels very squirmy. But
Mm,
hey, it's a process, and you have to keep coming
yes,
back to recognize where you need support.
absolutely. And we're human too, very much so. I'm very
Hmm.
much about being honest about that. I am flawed and also have good days and bad days, and benefit from coaching too myself. So
Yes.
talking of which, I mean mine's quite a practical one. I was thinking about what would I really love to talk about right now. I did take that question very literally. And mine is about being a small business owner, because I don't know about you, Kirsty, I find there's so much to juggle, so much to manage. There's been so much of a learning curve. So I'd want some ideas, some insight to help me manage this sort of ecosystem of a business that I've created, because I'm not sure I'm that
Mm.
effective in certain things. I think I could explore that and be a bit less squirrel. I know I've said sloth before. I've been the sloth, I've been the slow one, but now I think I'm channeling a bit of squirrel. Like, oh, look over here, look over there, do a bit of this. What was I doing? What was I thinking? Like there's that cartoon and there's a
It
dog that
was
sees a
up,
squirrel.
wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it is Up. I
Yeah.
think we've even spoken about Up before. But I was like, I feel like I am that dog, you know.
Yeah.
The thoughts there, and then poof, it's gone, replaced by another one, and shiny things and stuff. So I think I need to just that's what I would talk about. So just
So
going to
two
recap
very,
very
very
briefly.
different examples there. One really
Yes,
quite
they are very
practical
different.
and one much more vague and airy fairy. And both are very valid coaching topics.
Exactly. Just goes to show, anything can really come to the table with coaching. You
Yes.
might start
Yes.
with a question like either of the ones we've given as an example, and end up somewhere quite different. And it's not right or wrong. It's probably information, and it's probably going to be enlightening. So I think on that note, we have covered everything. No doubt we will come back to life coaching another time,
I
because
think we will.
I'm sure we've got more to say, to be honest. So
It's a great topic.
it is a great topic. So on that note, I think we will leave that there and see you all soon for another episode.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Mission Imperfect.
Please visit the show notes for details on how to contact us and for any resources we may have on the topic discussed.
Until next time, keep being imperfectly you. No one does it better.